Hi, I'm Shannon Thrasher, and this is 30-Second Tactics. Today, you can kind of tell by the title, we're going to talk about lies. And what I mean by that is not necessarily, malicious lies, but things that I've learned or been taught or heard or things that have been just everybody knows this over the last 20, 30 years that we've come to find out aren't really true. I want to make sure this information is out there so the new guys coming in aren't just hearing things and going, oh yeah, that's true because that's always been true and we've always heard that. The first thing I want to talk about is the so-called 21-foot rule. Now, most of you probably heard about this, and in a nutshell, it says if somebody's 21 feet away from you with a knife, that they can stab you before you can shoot them. Well, the problem with that so-called 21-foot rule is people have taken it to mean, well, if he's 22 feet away, he's not a deadly threat. And again, the problem is that number and that so-called rule came out of one study that one guy did many years ago. And what he was trying to determine was how much ground someone could cover, an adult male sprinting could cover in the time it took the average cop to draw his gun and fire one well-aimed round. Well, the problem with that is, first of all, the problem is every person that runs is different. Every person that draws a gun and tries to shoot the guy that's running at him is different. Every holster that they're using is different. But the main problem is that suggests, and I can't stress this enough, that if someone is 22 feet away with a knife, they're not a threat. And let's say you're 22 feet away and you're 21 feet away and you run at me with a knife and I get my gun out and I get one or two shots off. You guys that have been in real shootings or seen videos of real shootings, getting one or two or three or four or five good hits with a handgun is not a miracle cure for someone that's trying to kill you, especially if they're running full speed at you with a knife. What's going to stop their basic momentum and their last little breath from running at you and stabbing you in the neck with that knife? Another problem with that is, let's say that was an ironclad 21-foot thing and you had all the reaction time you needed to make the perfect headshot and stop the threat. Well, that's assuming the guy pulls out a knife at 21 feet, says, hey, I'm going to run at you and kill you, and then starts running at you. But what if he's just acting crazy or acting normal and all of a sudden starts running at you, and you're just thinking, oh, this guy's about to get tackled or pepper sprayed or punched in the face because he's trying to tackle me. And halfway there, or three-quarters of the way there, then you notice he's got a knife in his hand. Or he didn't have it in his hand, he just pulled it out on the way. So that 21-foot rule, man, please, stop repeating it. Don't use it. Train accordingly. Do not believe someone with a edged weapon or baseball bat or anything like that is not a danger simply because they're 22 feet away. Now, they may be 2 feet away and not be a danger. That's the totality of the circumstances. Okay, I don't want to beat that one up. Another one is night sights. Starting in the 90s, everybody had to have night sights on their gun. It's going to be so much better. Now, this is before everyone had flashlights. This is before lasers, and lasers is a whole other thing. Please don't put a laser on your handgun. But the argument was, I can see my sights better. I can make a better shot. And like so many things in the training world, it sounds good on paper. But when you actually put it to use, you find out two things. First of all, during the day, night sights don't matter because they're not glowing. You're using the square metal part of the sight anyway. During the night, night sights are glowing, but you can't see your target. Are you allowed to shoot something you can't positively identify? No, of course not. Well, maybe a 1 in a million circumstance where you're returning fire to a muzzle flash or something. But generally speaking, you have to identify the threat before you can shoot the threat, right? So seeing your sights doesn't matter if you can't see your target. Okay? And the other problem is, now there is a little bit at the twilight of the day or the morning where it's just not quite light and just quite dark, that the night sights can help you pick up your sights a little bit. But the other problem with night sights is night sights, as a rule, not every single one ever made, are round. They're three little dots. Where the way our brain works and the way our eyes work, it's much easier for us to line up a precise shot off of right angles. And if you think of your front sight and your rear sight, it's a bunch of right angles. Nice sharp squares that you just put together. Well, when now you're putting three little circles in there, it's harder for your brain and your eye to focus on that and make a good accurate shot anyway. So if you buy a gun that's got night sights on it, great. If you love night sights, great. Personally, I wouldn't spend another 50, 60, 80 bucks for night sights on a gun that didn't have them. Okay. Another thing, it's not so much a lie, it's just we're kind of cheating our guys out of proper training, and I'm not sure how to overcome that as a whole. And what I'm talking about is compressed shooting. Shooting right out of the holster, shooting with a gun tucked into your ribs before you've been able to extend fully for whatever reason. The main reason being, you're under immediate attack and the guy's very close to you. The problem with the way we train this is most of the time, most departments that do even train it, they just, they have you stand there maybe 1 or 2 yards away from the target, maybe even closer, and you draw, and as soon as you break leather, you point the gun at the target and you fire. And that's fine. But is that really what we need to be training, or is that just 10% of what we need to be training for compressed fire? You need to do a lot of things more, and I'm not going to make a whole long video on that out of this. But the restrictions on that are mostly range restrictions. What we call the target fan, or the range fan, where your bullets might go. So I can't lay you on your back and put a target dummy on top of you and have you shoot him, because your bullets are going to go up in the air and down the street and in the city and stuff. So that's kind of, I don't blame them so much on that one, because we're going to have to figure out how to train better on better ranges. The answer might be simunition training or airsoft or something, but we got to quit teaching these guys that all you got to do is pull it out of the holster real quick and boom, boom, boom. Because for one thing, where you're probably pointing when you do that is straight across, which means, okay, my gun's at my hip, now I'm shooting him in his hip. Okay, is the heart in his hips? Are the lungs in his hips? Is his brain in his hips? No. So you're not going to get a quick stop. Even if you happen to shatter his pelvis, which is unlikely with a handgun around. Okay, now he falls down. Does falling down mean he can't keep shooting you? Okay, enough on that one. Another thing also shooting and target training related is the concept of center mass. We always shoot center mass. Well, why do we teach that? Well, because it's accuracy. If I just have a sheet of paper and I draw a dot on that sheet of paper right in the center, you want to aim at that, and the more you miss, the more likely you're going to leave the page. But if I draw the dot on the extreme left side of the page, a half inch from the edge, if you miss a half inch, you've missed the whole target, right? So we tell everybody center mass, center mass, center mass. Well, the problem is, shooting paper is fun and shooting paper is good for qualifications, but we don't shoot paper to shoot paper. We shoot paper to have to shoot people when they're trying to shoot us, right? In a nutshell. Well, the problem is if you shoot center mass, true center mass, on most human bodies, and when I say that, just imagine the legs and the arms and the head are gone, because the torso is the biggest part. And the center of that torso, from the crotch to the bottom of the neck, is most likely going to be pretty low when it comes to hearts and lungs and stuff. What they call the upper thoracic area, where your heart and your lungs hang out, is really where you want to be putting those rounds. So first, we shouldn't be training people to shoot dead center of the target, because that's training them to shoot a little low. And second of all, when you say center mass, people start thinking, especially the rookies and stuff that haven't had any extra training, they'll start thinking, oh, I always have to shoot him right there. Right that spot in the chest, or right that spot above the stomach. And then he gets in a gunfight and that spot's not presented. And he has a little brain fart, if you will, because he's never trained properly, which is, to put words on it, shoot center mass of the available target. So if you want to shoot my head, center mass of my head's right about there. But if I'm behind a wall, then, and you're trying to shoot center mass and, you're 50% error on this side, you're hitting the wall, right? So it's center mass of what's available. One more thing on shooting, and a couple more things probably. A lot of these go to shooting because that's a lot of the training I do. So this is probably not going to apply to most of you young guys, but back in the day when we started out, they used to teach Weaver as a shooting position. And Weaver was basically where you put your shooting, I'll just say your right foot, your shooting foot, way far back, and you almost bladed yourself to the target. Now, the idea behind that was less of a target. Now, this was developed way before, most cops, and now I hope all cops, were wearing body armor on patrol. So a smaller target was a good idea. But now, when you have a armor in the front and the back, a smaller target that presents an unarmored side, especially an armpit that leads right to your heart, is a bad idea, right? Now, there's other reasons as far as fundamentals of shooting firearms go, that what's common now is an isosceles, where you're basically forming a triangle with your gun and your feet if viewed from overhead. But that's another thing. It was Weaver. We taught it, and we just eventually found out we were teaching wrong. So we changed it. Another thing is, target shooting. Close that one eye, focus real good on that front sight, okay? And that's great for target shooting. And I'm sure if you go talk to some Olympic shooters, they close their one eye. I know a lot of them like a patch over it, so they don't have the muscle strain of physically closing it. But in a gunfight, you're going to have both eyes open. I promise you, you can't help it. Your body on a physiological level is going to take over. You're going to have the whole fight or flight thing doing. You're going to be dumping adrenaline, and both of your eyes are going to be wide open. So if they're going to be wide open in a firefight, why don't we train to have them wide open? Especially now with all the optics coming on weapon systems. There is no reason in the world to have a red dot on your rifle or your pistol and close one eye. It's actually bad. It's counterintuitive. There's reasons not to do it. So next time you go to the range, practice, think about it. Do your best, keep both eyes open. Yes, you can still focus on the front sight. If you're using irons, you should be using a red dot. That's a different video. But get away from taking away 50% of your vision, all your depth perception, and 50% of your peripheral vision in training when you're not going to do it for real anyway. Okay, one more thing, and then I'm going to let you guys go because this video is getting kind of long. There was for years, and there still is, the conversation about fine motor skills. You should reach over the top of your slide and rack it or slingshot it like this, because in a firefight, you're not going to have the fine motor skills to take your thumb and hit that slide release. When you put that magazine in that AR platform rifle, you need to use the whole palm of your hand to strike that bolt release, because you're not going to have the fine motor skills. Look, let me stop you guys. It sounds really cool. But if we're reloading in a firefight, then every firefight's different, but generally, let's say these things have happened. I've encountered a deadly force. I have a deadly force encounter. So I'm amped up. I'm wired up. I got adrenaline dump. I'm as excited as I'm going to get all week, all year, my whole life, depending on the circumstances. And I've made the decision to fire, and I've fired. Now, I've fired so much that my gun's empty, which means that guy's either still a threat or still actively shooting at me, or there's more than one guy. So average gun today, the cop carrier is going to be anywhere from an unusual low of 7 or 8 to a probably average of 17 or 18 rounds. So let's just say I fired 18 rounds, and now I'm reloading. Now, is holding that gun on target, aiming that sights on target, getting that nice quick trigger press 18 times in a row with one little finger, is that a fine motor skill? I think so. So I just did 18 fine motor skills, but now you're telling me, instead of doing one more that I've practiced on the range all the time, just as much as I practice shooting, that I can't do that. So instead, you're going to teach me a method that takes longer, takes more movements, maybe I can't do, especially maybe this hand's out of whack, and now because I've never trained to do this, I got to do one of these crazy belt things. Okay? Don't get tied around the axle on fine motor skills. There are some times the slingshot might work, understand how it works and practice it once in a while, but I wouldn't recommend it. You guys are going to rock on with that slide stop. It's not a fine motor skill. If it is, you're perfectly capable of performing it because, like I said, pulling the trigger is a fine motor skill. Aiming is a fine motor skill. Defeating the locks on some of these modern holsters is a fine motor skill. You can do all that under stress. All right, like I said, I'm going to end it here, guys. The video's getting long. I hope you take from it what I wanted to give you, which is, yes, this is absolutely the way to do something until we find a better way to do it. And when we find a better way to do it, we need to be the bigger man and say, yeah, I taught this for 10 years. And then I figured out I was doing it wrong, or we had some sort of development. Now, some of the things, 20 years ago, we weren't teaching red dots on pistols because there weren't red dots on pistols, right? So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about things. And again, I'm going to run on. This video is going to be so long, you guys are going to tune out. So thanks for sticking around to the end. If you enjoy these videos, please do me a favor. Subscribe to them, like them, share them. It really helps the channel out. All right, if you have any ideas for videos, any topics you'd like to see, just go ahead and leave that in the comments. Thanks, guys.